Welcome to the Line Life podcast. I'm Jeff Postlethwaite of T&D World, and today we're bringing you more stories of the grit, courage, and inspirational teamwork that it takes to be a line worker.
Thank you for tuning in to the T&D World Line Life podcast, produced by Endeavor Business Media, a division of Endeavor B2B. My name is Amy Fischbach, and I'm the head of content for T&D World and also the host of the Line Life podcast. Before I dive into today's episode, I invite you to become part of our Line Life podcast community by searching for the Line Life podcast in your favorite podcasting app or going to linelife.podbean.com and clicking follow in the top right. We air interview-style episodes on the first and third Fridays of each month, and also audio stories in our In Case You Missed It series featuring articles that appeared in our print magazine on the second and fourth Fridays of each month. If you have a comment on this episode or a suggestion for a future guest, please reach out to me. You can email me at afischbach@endeavorb2b.com or reach out to me on LinkedIn or Instagram at Linemen World. I'd love to hear from you. Now let's move on to today's episode. Hi, I'm Amy Fischbach, and I'm the host of the Line Life podcast and also the head of content for T&D World magazine. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the Line Life podcast. Today, it's my pleasure to invite Max Fuentes back to the Line Life podcast. I first met Max years ago at the TDMMA conference, which is a wonderful event. In case you haven't been to it, it's going to be this fall in Minnesota. And over the years, Max and I kept in touch, and I saw him at the International Linemen's Rodeo Week, where he gave a presentation a few years ago. And he's also written several articles about safety and leadership in the line trade for T&D World magazine. In fact, for the October 2026 issue of T&D World magazine, in our field-focused electric utility operations section, or EUO, which comes out 6 times a year, Max wrote a special article just for us on the evolving leadership playbook for today's utility workforce. Make sure you check it out at tdworld.com and in our October print issue when it comes out. During today's episode of the Line Life podcast, Max is first going to talk about his career in the line trade and also some of the safety issues that he's seeing in his role today as the owner of Fuentes Consulting, in which he serves as an expert witness. Because of the length of our conversation, note that this podcast will be split into 2 parts, and the second part will be featured in about 2 weeks at linelife.podbean.com. Now let's move on to my recent conversation that I had with Max for the Line Life podcast. Max, thank you so much for joining us today. To begin, can you share with our Line Life podcast listeners a little bit about your career in the line trade?
I started in 1984, so that's 42 years ago. I started as a pre-apprentice lineman at the Sacramento Municipal Utility District. I spent a year on the ground as a groundman and as a laborer. And in 1985, I was promoted to a cold apprentice. I spent 6 months on a training crew out at our offsite training facility. And when I finally completed that tour, I was a qualified electrical worker, but under the direct supervision of a journeyman lineman. So I could work secondary voltages by myself, and I could work 4160 off the pole and then 21 with sticks. I did that until 1988. I topped out in September 12th, 1988. I'm a journeyman. Spent 2 years as a journeyman lineman, both on an underground overhead construction crew. I was a lead lineman on both. I became a light foreman, had a 4-man crew from 1990 to 96. I left the district, and my wife and we moved to Idaho, relocated the family. I did some work for a contractor there, and then I was with Northwest Lineman College as their chief technical field officer, a training instructor, for about a year. For some health issues with our in-laws, we came back to Sacramento. I opened up a trade school here called Trade Tech in Sacramento, and that lasted about a year. We weren't as successful as I'd like. And I went back in the tools to Sacramento Municipal I was 42 years old when I went back in as a lineman, and I was looking up and down the dock, and I said, I'm the oldest lineman on the dock now. And so I did that. I stayed in the tools for another 3, 4 years. Then I became a maintenance planner, inspector, and then I took over as the supervisor of safety and training for the whole department, including substations, line department, equipment operators. I did that. I was a permanent supervisor from '07, '08 to 2015 when I retired as a line supervisor, business operation for Grid Assets. So 2015, that gave me about 26, that gave me 31 years, 31 years in the trade, both outside and with the utility.
And I remember that you retired in 2015 at the age of 55. Can you talk about where you went from there?
I started my own company and I didn't know where it was going to go at first, but I started working with some of the utilities on, I did job audits and safety and training. And then I started to get into the field of expert witness work. And so right now, over the past 11 years, I do a lot of litigation, expert witness work for attorneys. I started doing a lot of legal work as an expert witness. So that is a very, very interesting field when you get into it. When you're a blue collar tradesperson, middle class, and now you're thrown into the legal world and you start to learn it's a dog eat dog world. And there's really, if you believe that there's always going to be justice and right and wrong, you really don't understand what you're getting into. What you're trying to do is create and develop opinions about the case to be objective as possible and not to advocate, but to educate. My job is, if I go to trial, is to educate the jury about the specifics that my engagement was hired by the attorneys for. There's a whole depth of things that go into being an expert witness. But I also have the good fortune of working with several small utilities in California and Nevada for hurt man rescue, safety meetings. I develop SOPs for companies working with their engineers, and I do rubber glove annual recertification training. As a matter of fact, tomorrow I'll be up in beautiful the Sierras doing hurt man rescue all day for a Truckee Donner, and that's where I'm at right now.
That's wonderful. I'm so glad you're able to do that. And Max, what are some major safety issues that you're seeing in the line trade right now?
Well, I will tell you that there's some very disturbing trends that are going on in our trade. I'm seeing a lot of young journeymen, I don't even know if they're journeymen, I don't know. But I'm seeing a lot of injuries and I'm seeing a lot of fatalities. And when I look at the age, I start to notice a trend, and it's between 25 and 37 is where I see some catastrophic events. But recently, I've seen some very young line hands. I'm not going to call them linemen. I don't know what their status is. But if you're 19, 20, 21, you more likely than not, you're not a journeyman. You've graduated from high school. Let's say at 18, let's say you go to a line school, and let's say that's 3 months. You still have a full year on the ground. And so let's say now you're 20, and by the time you top out, which should take 3.5 to 4 years, the gold standard is the 4 years. You're about 24. You're a little bit more mature. When I see 20-year-olds getting catastrophically injured, there's something wrong with that company. I also see that there's no repercussions for the organization. A guy gets hurt, I go in on a case, and I asked a question, I go, was anybody terminated? No. Here's a big one. After the accident, was anyone drug screened? No, we don't do that. So there's all these protocols that are missed. Was there any discipline? No discipline. Okay, we got a big problem here, and I can't cure that. All I can do is provide my opinion about how that company works. And I've represented a lot of companies on these accidents.
I am really sorry to hear that, Max. And what are some of the things that you're seeing out in the field that could maybe be contributing to these accidents?
A lot of these linemen want to be influencers, and they're posting a lot of things online, and it just gives me all kinds of information to provide to my safety meetings. Tomorrow, I'll be pulling up 3 videos at my Hurt Man Rescue, and I'm going to just ask the lineman, what do you see? What's happening here? What is right and what is wrong about what they're doing? And I always pull up the ones where they're taking shortcuts, they're not putting enough cover up, they're more interested in promoting themselves than they are actually performing the work in a professional manner. The other thing I'm seeing is some catastrophic falls at training facilities, even though they have total fall arrest or total fall restriction on a wood pole. I'm going to be on the pole tomorrow, and I'm going to be filming because I want to show some of these younger guys why they're making mistakes when they climb.
Max, can you explain some of the mistakes that you're seeing them making when they're climbing?
There's a lot of misinformation. The problem is and a lot of the younger guys, they hate it when we older guys say it, the free climbing. When we used to free climb, we had to learn a very, very specific set of climbing mechanics and body positioning, because if you fall, it's over. So what I'm seeing is some very, very bad climbing mechanics. In the old days, when we used to free climb, we had a way of climbing poles that would enable us to recover if we gaffed out. We were able to get our gaffs back in the pole to save us. When we were climbing with just our straight safety with no choking mechanism on it, we had a method of recovering from both gaffs cutting out that we didn't fall down 30 feet. But I'm telling you right now, I'm seeing guys, even with the pole restriction devices, falling 20 feet, 30 feet, falling completely off the pole. And I never experienced that in my 20 plus years in the field and teaching pole climbing. So there's a problem out there. I think when in April of 2015, when OSHA said, from now on, you will no longer be unattached from the pole, they made a big mistake because they should have given us a caveat to train people in a specific manner. And they should have just said, we have to keep our climbing mechanics up to date. So tomorrow, I'm going to go up and I'm going to show and I'm going to film myself showing how we used to learn. And here's one of the problems is a lot of these guys, they're always looking at their feet. And they're taught that. That's the problem. The way they're taught, and then they have this choking device on there that's just choked so hard that they can't get their body in the right position. So, and I'm seeing a lot of climbing instructors show the same wrong techniques. And I'm not blaming them. I'm not saying that what they're doing is bad, but what I'm saying is they can be better. And the thing is, it's because OSHA has tried to engineer safety into this. Now, you can engineer safety on certain manufacturing processes, but on human skills, behaviors, and actions, it's hard to create a mechanism that's foolproof. And what you'll find out is even at these line schools, you'll see a guy cut out and the restriction device will catch him 6 to 8 feet down. Well, here's the problem. You're not supposed to fall more than 2 feet, right? That's the OSHA rule. No more than a fall of 2 feet. And yet, even with that device on, they're falling 6, 8, 10, 15 feet. The problem is they're trusting the equipment so much, they're not taking the step to stop the fall by utilizing a climbing mechanic that we used to teach with just we used to call it our buck strap because we didn't have a choking device. So what we used to do was we used to make sure that our gaffs were close to the pole, that we would push against the pole if both feet cut out, or we would grab our belt and choke it ourselves. This initiated the correct reaction to that event. But now they're being taught, hey, guys, don't worry about it. The equipment will save you. Well, okay, you won't fall completely off the pole, but guess what? If you drop 8 feet, you've just created an injury by compressing your spine or your hips, or you fall back into your gaffs and your knees are impacted. Whereas in the old days, if you cut out, trust me, your reaction was so fast that I don't ever recall anyone actually falling more than 2 or 3 feet. It's so frustrating to watch these line hands go out and they don't use the proper PPE. They don't cover up enough. The issue is they're wearing rubber gloves. They've got sleeves on. The bucket is insulated and isolated, but then they won't throw enough cover up, or they'll put the phase on their bucket truck, or they won't apply the jumper correctly, or their rigging isn't right. The reason is because that bucket truck has just saved them. That I'm seeing not using proper techniques, it's not a good thing.
And Max, I know you told me that you were going to put in a presentation proposal for the International Linemen's Rodeo Week Safety and Training Conference to talk about the old ways of doing things. And one of those things that you mentioned is that it's really important for line workers to really know the area that they're working. Can you talk a little bit more about this?
Today's linemen don't have a full breadth and depth of the area they're working. And you might say, well, Max, what do you mean by that? Well, in the old days, we used to work from the pole, which means that if we were hot sticking, we could only do work from the bottom of the apparatus and equipment, which means spatially things change when you're using a hot stick 6 to 8 feet away. All of your rigging changes as opposed to if you're over the top in a bucket truck and you can see things easier and you can manipulate it with your hands. So, in my opinion, I'm not saying go back to hot sticking, but I truly believe that if you're doing work on a pole, you shouldn't have 4 or 5 bucket trucks on the same pole, especially if it's de-energized. If it's de-energized, you put the apprentice on the pole. If he can get the majority of his apprenticeship on the pole, rigging and working, and I'm not talking about energized work where they can't rubber glove off the pole, but if it's de-energized, put them on the pole. Put them on the pole, make sure that their mechanics are good, make sure that they understand rigging. And I think what's happening is especially the accountants and the project managers, they don't understand how you can be much more productive by having an individual on the pole. They say, well, we'll send 3 bucket trucks out there. Well, no, each one of those bucket trucks costs money. In my time, we would have 1 bucket. That was great. And we could put 2 guys on the pole. And man, we could knock out work like you can't believe. So if it's about productivity, get your guys on the pole, get a guy in the bucket truck, but don't booger up the entire pole with bucket trucks.
And another thing I'd like to talk to you about is the importance of staying safe when working on other utility systems. For example, if you're working on storm restoration or on a major construction project in another part of the country and traveling for line work.
There's such a diversity of types of utilities and construction standards. You get guys that are coming to California to make a lot of money because there's a lot of overtime to be made, wildfire mitigation, all that stuff, upgrading the system. If you take a guy from a very rural area in the middle of the country and you stick them in downtown Los Angeles, where the infrastructure is 70, 80, 100 years old, it's 4 kV on one side of the pole, it's 122.40, maybe 16.6 on top, and the pole's broken. And you can only use 1 bucket truck, and you're in an alley, and you've got congestion and traffic control. There are so many challenges to overcome that and it doesn't mean you're bad at what you do. It means, man, this is a whole new paradigm. You go downtown LA, San Diego, San Francisco, even in where I'm at in Sacramento, we have alleys, very narrow alleys. You can't take an 80-foot bucket truck down or a huge line truck. So a lot of it is just smaller bucket, 1 bucket, small footprint. I mean, traffic control, dense populations. Line work is such a diverse and complex job that, unless you are you go from the shallow to the deep end of the pool, and pretty soon you're treading water. And if you haven't done that in a while, it's a challenge.
And you told me that you're seeing a lack of leadership and succession planning in the utility industry. What do you think is contributing to this?
My biggest thing right now is succession planning. I just did a presentation on succession planning. How do you develop leaders to come into your trade? And how do you do the succession planning? How do you identify them? Our trade is so big and so diverse that finding good leaders isn't about finding the guy that yells the most or has the biggest ego. It's about finding people who have a very well thought out game plan, are able to communicate it, and to work with very different personalities on the crew. I wish that someone had put me through this training that I provide to utilities when I was a 30-year-old journeyman or line foreman. I was that guy, man. I was I believed all the hype. I was, lineman, we walk on water and we're all that in a bag of chips. And in retrospect, God, I could have been so much better. And now at my age, I'm like, wow. So I do have foremen and supervisors that I provide training to, how to do a performance evaluation, how to evaluate your people, onboarding, how to train people, how to negotiate difficult situations, especially as when you get to a labor relations issue, if you get discipline issues, how to deal with the union. I mean, a lot of people, you get thrown in there and you go from being a union member to being a frontline supervisor. And now you're an exempt employee and now you're on the other side. How do you manage that? Because now these are all your friends, right? You worked all those long nights, all those storms, and pretty soon now you're at a different level. It's just like the military. Okay. In the military, right, the officers have one side, to enlisted men. There's a reason for that. And it's because you can still be friends, obviously, but you have to know that you're the boss now. And you have to actually advocate for the organization. You have to go from the labor side to the management. And sometimes you get orders that come down from above you that you have to defend, and then you have to get your people to buy into that, and they may not like it. I was one of those guys. I mean, I had some good mentors. I had good coaching and mentoring, and guys that would come through and they'd pull me up by the short hairs and go, hey, Max, what you're doing, what you may be saying is right, but the way you're communicating it is wrong. And I learned the hard way. So that's my goal right now, is to help companies with leadership, succession planning.
And what other issues do you see going on in the line trade right now?
I guess one of my other pet peeves is we have way too many guys that are posting on their podcasts or on their Facebook or Instagram that this hero complex. For whatever reason it is, I don't understand this generation where they constantly have to tell you and get this praise like, oh, dad's a hero. He went out and worked 16 hours or 20. You know what? Let your work speak for itself. Be a quiet professional. Be disciplined. Get your paycheck. You get paid a really good amount of money. You got good benefits. Take care of your family. Take care of the people around you. Stop telling people that you're this hero. Don't get out of this self-aggrandizement about how we're a first responder. You know what? I was just a lineman, and I just loved my job so much that I never had to tell anyone. I just it's a very big paradigm shift for us older generation guys to overcome. Just let other people get the glory. Just every day, quiet professional. Be that person who shows up every day, takes care of the apprentice, takes care of the foreman, takes care of the crew, takes care of themselves.
And then I know you said that in the line trade, families can help a lot with keeping their loved ones safe. How do you think that they can help with this?
One of the things I tell guys when I'm training them, I go, hey, listen, and I would love to speak to their wives. I would go, if I'm speaking to their wives, I'm going to go, every morning when he gets up and has his eggs and his coffee, ask him if he's going to make sure that the line's de-energized, he throws the grounds on, and he's going to wear all his PPE. Just ask him that every morning and tell him if he doesn't, you won't be around much longer. Your wife can drive you. I mean, there were times I worked for a non-union contractor many years ago, and I came home and I told my wife, I said, Terry, I said, I'm not going to let them kill me. And I would refuse to do certain things. But what I did was I was kind of helping the foreman get to a point where, hey, I'm super productive. I'm really good at line work. I just may take a little bit longer to inspect rigging, look at the equipment, and use more cover, but I'm more productive than your best lineman. And I'll make sure every day that I take care of you. And pretty soon, man, me and him, we were like that. He trusted me. Max, can you go down to that end? And yeah, no problem. I'll handle it. But I'm just seeing a lot of bad things happening in our trade, and it's very demoralizing as an older lineman who thought I had provided enough information on my end. And all of us, we gave tribal knowledge, generational knowledge we passed down, and I think we're losing a lot of it.
What do you think can be done to bridge the knowledge gap?
I would love to get more speaking opportunities. I would love to be able to just go into organizations and just sit in their bullroom and talk to their foreman. Just let's talk. And I'm a little disappointed in my old utility. I've said, hey, you've got probably half a dozen to a dozen old line hands that live in this area. Just invite us into the safety meeting. Let us talk. Let us mix and interact. It's funny that, once you retire, people seem to say, okay, he's gone. Oh, you mean that 35 to 40 years of experience, we don't need that anymore? The other thing is I would capture corporate memory. And the way I would do this is through a very good comprehensive near miss policy. I would make sure that it was relayed and it was communicated to the people and it was integrated into your training program and your SOPs. Right now, I'm really surprised. I've been asked to write a lot of standard operating procedures. A lot of times, though, SOPs can be very, very comprehensive and very voluminous, especially at the engineering level. They work at a different level than the rest of the line hands. So what I do is I try to go, okay, do you want SOPs or do you want SWPs, which is a standard work practice? So if we're talking about installing and removing poles for the field personnel, then it's an SWP, right? I don't need to know an SOP to do that. I mean, you could create it that way, but instead of 25 pages on how to install and remove a pole, we just cut it in half, right? Okay, is it energized, de-energized? Are we transmission, distribution? Is it in a backyard? I mean, these are all things that we had that was tribal knowledge that was passed down. But now I'm finding myself recreating the wheel because people didn't gather that information.
Max, can you give me an example of this?
I tell you what, Amy, here's a great example. From 2013 to 2015, in 2 years at the Sacramento Municipal Utility District, we lost over 200 years of corporate memory, of experience, education, and training at the engineering level and at the lineman level. And nobody at the upper level ever came to me. And I had volunteered this, and so did an engineer, my manager, to just have us write down and document all these processes that were, and there was nothing. Corporate, they just didn't value it. And now we're paying the price for it. And every big utility is, every single one, every utility is. Especially your very, very large ones. They're guys, the silver tsunami. It's that wave of us baby boomers, the Gen Xers that are now leaving the workforce with, my God, 30 to 40 years of knowledge. I mean, you can imagine how much knowledge that is that we're losing.
In part 2 of this series, you'll hear more of my conversation with Max, including his advice for the young line workers coming into the trade so that they can work safely and come home to their families every night. And if you have a comment on this episode, or if you'd like to be a guest on a future Line Life podcast, please email me at afischbach@endeavorb2b.com or drop me a line at LinkedIn or on Instagram at Linemen World. You can also meet me at the 2026 International Linemen's Expo, where I'll be doing recordings for future Line Life podcast episodes. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Line Life podcast. And until next time, please stay safe out there, line workers. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Line Life podcast, produced by Endeavor Business Media, a division of Endeavor B2B. Be sure to subscribe or follow the Line Life podcast in your favorite podcasting app so new episodes will be delivered straight to you. For more insights, you can visit our website at tdworld.com/podcasts or linelife.podbean.com. You can also connect with us by following us on Instagram at Linemen World or on Facebook, LinkedIn, or X. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Line Life podcast.